With illegal Chinese police stations in the country, allegations of election interference, and what the government calls China's disruptive presence in global politics, national security has been top of mind in Ottawa. The Trudeau government now turning its attention to foreign investment and protecting Canadian assets that might be vulnerable. The man leading that charge is the Minister for Innovation, Science and Industry, François-Philippe Champagne, who joins us right now. Minister, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Michael. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Nice to have you. Listen, I want to begin here, of course, with the announcement that you made last night, because in making that announcement, you said that Canada needs to update the Investment Canada Act because of changing geopolitical realities. What exactly are you referring to there? Is it specifically China?
No, I mean, the law is agnostic, but what I see is that, and it's not only in Canada, you've seen that around our partners, the G7 partners, Five Eyes around the world, is that the geopolitical landscape has evolved a great deal since the Act was last reviewed. I think it's more than a decade ago. So this is about giving us more tool, more authority to be more agile, to go at the speed of business and make sure that, you know, with these new tools, we can better protect Canada's economic interests, but also our national security. And you've seen me in action already. I think Canadians know by now that when it comes to national security, there won't be ever a compromise. You know, I blocked recently when there was Chinese companies interested in taking ownership or part ownership of some Canadian mining company in lithium. I blocked that. So this is really country agnostic. So it covers any investments by a foreign entity of a Canadian enterprise. But it's about giving us more flexibility, more tools to make sure we can respond. For example, in some specific areas, we're going to require pre-notification. So if you have a non-Canadian entity who tries to buy a Canadian entity in, for example, sensitive technology, critical minerals, anything relating to personal data, we'll ask for pre-notification. We can also impose conditions. So we know that in the context of intellectual property, if the transaction is completed and you ask for divestiture, well, I would say the information has all been transferred. So we will want to prevent that. We'll impose conditions to say, for example, if it's IP related, you'll have to keep the entity separate to prevent this information from being transferred. We will also be able to impose undertakings, a bit like American colleagues are doing, because under the current act, it's either yay or nay. And now we will be in a position to say yes, but, and impose a number of conditions, for example, having Canadians on the board, making sure that the information stays in Canada, having higher penalties. So it's really revamping a law which is very crucial in order to protect our economic interests and national security in line with what's happening in the world now. More agility.
Yeah, well, let's break that up a little bit, because you talk about specific areas. And I'm wondering if there are sectors that you are more worried about than others, because I realize that there's a complete list that's meant to come out later. But off the top of your head, have you seen investments, deals that you find concerning? Are there sectors that you think require immediate attention?
Totally. Well, I would say artificial intelligence, quantum computing, cybersecurity, anything which has to do with personal data. We'll be like a hawk on these things to make sure we protect the interest of Canadians. Those would be the ones, if you ask me now, where we have already applied and scrutiny, but now we're going to be making that clear in the law, because I also appreciate that we need to provide businesses predictability. So they will know in advance that when it comes to these sensitive areas, there'll be additional scrutiny to protect our national economic interests and our national security.
Now, these amendments would give you, or anyone who holds the industry portfolio, as you alluded to, the power to impose restrictions, temporary restrictions on companies who want to invest. You also can then go to the Minister of Public Safety to decide whether or not there needs to be a security review on a proposed investment. But all that said, I'm wondering, where does the transparency come in? Because if it boils down to the Minister of Industry and the Minister of Public Safety, where does Parliament come in to be able to judge whether or not that type of review is necessary?
Well, when it comes to national security, I would say, Michael, you always want to be as transparent as you can be with Canadians. But I think folks listening at home understand when it comes to national security, there's things that you cannot just put in the open because that would compromise national security. So we do that with experts. We do that with our agency. and whether it's the RCMP, whether it's the CSIS, our intelligence agency, it's never the ministry taking a decision in vacuum. It's a decision which is reasoned, which is based on evidence, and which is informed by our national security agencies, which provide the analysis, and then obviously it's for the minister to make a final decision. But I think there's a number of safeguards to make sure that these decisions are in the best interest of Canadians.
Do you worry about scaring away investment, though? And I understand there are national security concerns, but up against that is the reality that we as a country, we are a trading nation. We rely on foreign partners, foreign deals in order to create economic activity. Do you worry about scaring away companies?
No, not at all. Michael, listen, I've been on the road. I was in Japan. I was in South Korea. I just came back from Germany 2 days ago. I mean, we see a record level of interest in investing in Canada because we have what the world needs and what the economy of the 21st century needs to be prosperous. So I have no concern. At least I would even say that this is being applauded by our allies and partners around the world because Canada is serious when it comes to national security. We're going to protect our critical minerals so they are available to our friends and allies around the world. We're going to protect sensitive technologies. We're going to be making sure that personal data is protected. I think it provides, a level playing field with our partners of the G7, the Five Eyes. Everyone is upping their game because of the geopolitical context, which has changed dramatically over the last 10 years. And I think I'll never apologize for protecting the national security of Canada and protecting Canadians.
Okay, I hear you say that, but of course your announcement yesterday was made the same day that Radio Canada broke that story about a government contract for RCMP communications that was awarded to a company that has ties with the Chinese government. In fact, its parent company, Hytera, is facing 21 espionage charges in the United States. Does your bill, does your intent here get undermined when a government contract goes to a firm with such questionable ties?
Well, listen, it sent a signal in town that everyone needs to be more vigilant. I'm like you and Canadians, and I think the Prime Minister has been outspoken. We're all concerned about that. We need to get to the bottom of things to understand how could this ever happen. Obviously, the Invest in Canada Act is not targeted, I would say, at government contract. This is about foreign investment. But one thing that we just learned is that contract has been suspended by the RCMP. I think it's the right decision, but now we need to go beyond that. We need to understand how could this ever happen. And I hope what I've announced yesterday is kind of sending a signal in town that everyone needs to be more vigilant, every department, every agency, when they're contracting. They need to take into account, like they always do, national security. But I think we need better processes to make sure that we are very vigilant to make sure that situation like the one you're mentioning does not happen again.
Minister Champagne, really appreciate the time today. Thank you for it.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Michael, for having me, and hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. Take care.